Thank you, CEDA, for giving me this opportunity. I stand before you and before a minister that I was once very proud to serve as a liberated public servant. And I am delighted to be able to be here and be the Kevin Andrews warm-up act. And very pleased in a small way to be able to continue to contribute to the reform agenda of his government by chairing the Aged Care Sector Committee. My starting point in these few remarks, recognising that I do stand between you and lunch, my starting point is the philosophical position expounded by the Minister over many years, his explicit recognition that government policy on social and human services depends on active cross-sectoral collaboration and, most importantly, engagement with the institutions of civil society, with the charities, with the advocacy organisations, with the not-for-profits, with the social enterprises. And of course, I share that philosophy. The key reason when I left the Australian Public Service was a growing recognition that has grown further over this last 6 or 7 years that in a real sense the future of participatory democracy in Australia lies with civil society, and with civil society working with both the private and the public sectors in the public interest. The challenge the Minister faces is profound. It seems to me we have a deep and perplexing problem. It's the problem associated with the intergenerational transfer of welfare recipiency, with the reliance on government benefits, which is then handed down to children and, areas that I know in Western Sydney, grandchildren. The Treasurer has articulated that in a narrative of entitlement. My own tale centres on dependency. I suppose it's the other side of the coin. It reflects my view that the fault lies not with misguided individuals, but with successive governments who have, with the best of intentions, often achieved the very worst of outcomes. Governments who have, in effect, through the way they have delivered social services, helped to create a culture of entitlement that now besets us. Most Australians, I think, certainly myself, continues to support a strong safety net, a view that we do need to provide services to those in need, including that small minority of deeply troubled and dysfunctional families. But the problem is we've delivered that safety net. We've delivered those government transfer payments and support programs and concessions and subsidies in a way that has, year by year, engendered learned helplessness. In other words, what we've done is to marginalise and exclude Australians even as we seek to help them. And we've done that because we so often treat those individuals who need help as recipients or as beneficiaries or as cases to be managed. In other words, what we have succeeded in as a society is in disengaging and disempowering citizens by, in effect, making decisions on their behalf. We, governments, we, society, have created dependency and a culture of entitlement, a world described, I think, by Aboriginal Australians best, because, in a sense, it is Aboriginal Australians who have suffered the most serious consequences of this. And they describe the world that has been created quite unintentionally, as a world of sit-down money and go-round-in-circles programs and welfare poison. We need, it seems to me, to design and deliver our services quite differently. And the way to do that is to empower and engage civil society organisations and communities and individual citizens and, in my view, the private sector. Here are the three key things that I think we need to do. Number one, stop seeing not-for-profit organisations merely as contracted deliverers of government services. Stop seeing them as simply a cheaper, more efficient, more effective way of delivering the same old, same old. Instead, go out and commission not-for-profit organisations, not just to deliver programs for government, but to help design programs for government, and to do so on the basis of agreed outcomes. And then, I hope, letting a diverse range of deliverers innovate in how they go about doing it. In other words, we need to allow Australian citizens choice, give them a diversity of providers to choose from, and ensure that the programs that are being delivered are flexible. We need to see the relationship as one of collaboration, not of contract. We need to say this is a relationship that can be transformational, not transactional. Look, think about this already. I don't know what it is, $27, $28 billion worth of government programs in human and social services each year are being delivered by not-for-profit organisations. But very few of them are able to contribute to the design of the programs. Too many of them are burdened by bureaucratic red tape. I'd like to pay tribute here, in fact, to the governments in Western Australia and in Victoria, who it seems to me have really started to take a lead in promoting partnership between government, the public services and not-for-profit organisations to actually collaborate in designing and delivering government. Second thing we need to do is to engage the non-profit and profit sectors in helping not just to deliver, not just to design government programs, but actually to together fund programs. In other words, let's really start to embrace social impact investment. In this regard, I think it's New South Wales under Barry O'Farrell and Mike Baird who have really taken a lead, a bold lead, in trialling and, in fact, demonstrating now social benefit bonds. Because what they have done is they brought in the experience and the entrepreneurship of really good not-for-profit organisations, initially Uniting Care and the Benevolent Society, and then brought them together with funding from the private sector to address one of the most thorny problems in social services, how to reduce the rising level of out-of-home care for children having to be removed from families. And then the government entering into a contract to pay on the basis of results. The first results are very good. Both organisations were able to raise private sector funding quite quickly. Uniting Care has just announced its returns on its first year, a return of 7.5%. Not bad, I think, given that many of the investors were really investing for the social value as much as for the financial returns. South Australia, Queensland, New Zealand are other jurisdictions that are following suit. Think of this, as you will, as performance-based outcomes on steroids. Because what it does is to allow socially responsible investors and socially responsible corporations to seek shared social and financial returns by investing in beneficial public impact. If successful, of course, the government reduces budgetary costs. And then what it does is share its savings with the civil society organisations, who can then, in turn, pay a return on the bonds that have been issued to investors. And it doesn't just have to stay with out-of-home care. We've seen, looking around the world, you can apply this also to things like the cost of prisoner recidivism, or to affordable housing, or to migrant settlement services. Sadly, I would have to say, the Commonwealth tends to have been a laggard in this regard. In my view, it could take more of a lead. For example, as I pointed out before a joint parliamentary committee on foreign affairs last Friday, you could see this technique applied to the development and trial of development impact bonds for the delivery of overseas aid, allowing the civil society organisations to issue bonds in order to scale up their activities beyond what is available from the government. Third thing we need to do is to empower citizens, yes, citizens, to make decisions for themselves, to allow those in need of support within the budgetary constraints set by governments to self-manage and self-direct their services, to choose the services they need, to select the providers they want. In short, governments need to have the courage to implement consumer-directed care boldly and with as few constraints as possible. Manage the risk as people start to make decisions on their own behalf. Because that's the key to allowing people, to the extent that they wish, to take control of their own lives. People with a disability, senior citizens, those struggling with mental ill health. Because if you empower them, they can then design and spend their support better than any group of public servants I've ever chaired could do on their behalf. And I think it's a tribute to the Minister and to his government at the Commonwealth level that they have embraced this concept of consumer-directed care, CDC, both in the rollout of the National Disability Scheme and in the aged care sector reforms. So, to conclude before our lunch, if we are to maintain an equitable society, if we're to promote social mobility and equal opportunity as hallmarks of the Australian way, we have to deliver our safety net in more innovative ways. If rights and entitlements and needs are to be balanced against responsibilities and obligations, it seems to me we have to engage civil society organisationally and citizens individually in the design and the delivery and the funding of social services. As I hope we will hear from the Minister, this is very much at the heart of the Commonwealth Government's agenda, as it is increasingly on the agenda of many state and territory governments. I think we have a chance to rewrite the story. Thank you.